Okay, why don't we get started? Thank you for being here. It's kind of quiet around the Capitol right now. I think I'm probably the only one in the House, right? Feels like it. Nonetheless, last week was obviously a busy week, starting out with a confirmation that obviously was difficult, I think, certainly for us. These aren't pleasant things, but I think we did what we had to do, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Obviously, the governor was not happy, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But I think, on balance, we know that we needed to do this. This was not a surprise. It shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody. We needed to do it, and it is over at this point, and we're hopeful. In fact, I wrote a letter to the governor, I think it was yesterday, just urging him to bring forth a candidate now that in our view is a little more balanced and that we can work with, and if he does that, I don't see any problem with a future confirmation. A lot of things, kind of going through the event cycle over the course of the week. Senator Peterson had a business-wide property tax bill, which we're certainly anxious about. Our goals last year were to, in fact, get at the business property tax, begin this cycle, in fact, of getting rid of it eventually, and Senator Peterson's bill takes us once again in that direction, and that is a direction, that's a commitment you're going to hear a lot about. It might bump against the governor one more time, I don't know, but you're not going to see Senate Republicans give up on this at all. It's something Senator Ortman is I think, loyal to in terms of an idea, and frankly all the rest of us on the tax committee are as well. So that's simply not going to go away. Senator Ingebrigtsen and the Environmental Committee began to, or continued his efforts with respect to permitting and looking for greater efficiencies, obviously, with DNR and pollution control agencies. That will certainly continue. We did deal, and I'm not sure if we announced these formally to you, our committee deadlines. First deadline is March 16th, second March 23rd, and the third is March 30th, and I think they're in general accord with the House, and so certainly we're fine there. I don't think necessarily mean that we're going to wait until those deadlines before we do anything. This is in my hope, a fast-track session. You might not know this, at a fundraiser a few months ago, or a couple of weeks ago, we sort of had a length of session auction. It got down to 7 weeks in terms of where my caucus was, but we'll see. That's probably not practical, but I think the message was, let's get it done. Let's get it done early and working certainly that direction. You hear that every year, but I will tell you there's I think a commitment to try to do that. We may, in fact, find ourselves working a little bit faster than the House on some of these things, and certainly that's okay. Constitutional amendment on Wednesday dealing with voter ID, a long hearing. It got, in the end, I understand, tied up in this question about absentee ballots. Senator Vanderveer is going to get a constitutional opinion on that, bring it back, I believe next week is his thought on that, and as we do that, the committee will most undoubtedly, in some fashion or another, advance that to probably the Rules Committee, and we'll advance it to the floor. I don't think at this point there's any question about the fact that photo ID will probably appear on the election ballot in 2012. We had the right to work thing yesterday. Senator Thompson introduced that bill, and obviously that's part of a larger litany of constitutional amendments that our caucus is going to consider, and each has sponsors, each has advocates. Within our group, we've got a group chaired by Senator Limmer that's actually taking these constitutional amendments, synthesizing them a little bit in terms of putting together a lot of information about them, and we'll have a very lengthy caucus in probably a couple of weeks, I would guess, to take a look at these and ultimately decide which ones are going to advance and which ones we're not. At this point, it would look to me like we're at least obviously on the marriage amendments there. Photo ID is probably coming, and anything else is subject to further consideration. You may be aware that, I think it was yesterday, that Senator Roebling advanced Commissioner Showalter through the Finance Committee, and and he then will go on to the so-called floor docket. I think, generally speaking, there should be no problems with him at all. He's been I think a trusted advisor, frankly, on both sides of the aisle through the Plenty administration. That continues on. Just looking forward, next week we're going to be taking up the bills probably on Wednesday that the House took up on the floor, I believe it was yesterday, on tort reform and so on. So you can probably expect that. The Jobs and the Economic Growth Committee, chaired by Senator Michelle, is going to be taking up a bill that has to do with a moratorium on rulemaking for state agencies that probably will be somewhat controversial. It's chaired by, or not chaired, but authored by Senator Lilly, and I think you're going to find that that's something that's certainly going to get a lot of debate. But I tell you what, again, we deal with businesses and concerns at the citizen level back at our hometowns and businesses as well. This is all that we hear in terms of trying to get our grips on the rampant expansion of regulations by state agencies. So that's going to, I think, advance and certainly get good discussion. Senator DeCreif is going to have a couple bills dealing with veteran employment issues. I don't know all the details of those at this point, but we will certainly be addressing those as well. Let me just conclude. This week was a week difficult for, I think, all of us in the sense that to not confirm a governor's appointee is not an easy thing to do. And I think you saw Senator Rosen do it a certain bit of grace and style that I think hopefully characterizes our caucus in terms of how we do these things. It was, I think, the kind of style that I hope epitomizes our caucus as we move through these difficult issues. So, but all that said, I would also say that I think the governor was grossly unfair in his criticism of us. I do think we are fit to lead. I do think we are fit to govern. I think his comments were literally over the top in terms of his characterization of our work. And I would further add that if you go back to the United States Senate record, you will find very, very similar kind of notions, activities, and practices by himself as a United States Senator, taking up Bush nominees, and in 38 occasions, he, for all kinds of reasons, some not very well stated, but decided that a certain candidate was not good enough to be confirmed to certain positions in the Bush administration, and including, for instance, Condoleezza Rice, no slouch at all, president of Stanford University. It seems like if you can, be president of Stanford University, that you got a certain level of ability, but it certainly wasn't good enough for the governor. John Ashcroft, were his views extreme? I didn't ever think so, but certainly the governor did in his voting no on John Ashcroft. So as you look at those lists, and I think we're going to make those available to you and I simply take a look at those because I think they do reflect in many ways a position that we took relative to Senator Anderson, and the fact that we felt that, and I indicated to them that in some respects Senator Anderson's perhaps greatest strength, and that is that of being a legislator, which advocated strongly for positions in the energy policy area. That may in fact been her greatest weakness when you put her in a position, a quasi-judicial position of having to make very, very fine and intense decisions about law relating to energy policy, and can you be balanced? And as a matter of fact, I think this was certainly one of the Supreme Courts. It was either Judge Roberts or Judge Alito, where in fact the governor himself commented that we're looking for moderate, independent views who decide cases from the mainstream judicial and social perspectives. Well, okay, I think we'd probably all agree with that, but I don't think generally speaking that Senator Anderson had so-called moderate views in the energy policy area. And that's not to fault her. That's her position. We all knew it. We just didn't feel comfortable with somebody with more radical, or not necessarily radical, but extreme views, at least in terms of having certain hardline positions on energy, should in fact be making these policy decisions at the PUC board. So I'm just going to stop there, and we can leave it open for questions about what I've said or not said, and we'll carry on and call it a Friday.
You said that on photo ID, there's no question it will probably appear on the ballot. Is there no question, or is it a probably?
In my view, I should probably temper that a little bit of probably, but in my personal views, and just talking with caucus members, both House and Senate, I think, and talking to our constituents, I think all of us get an enormous amount of pressure or interest shown in putting photo ID on the ballot. I think its time has come. Obviously, the polling on that particular issue is pretty high and reflect favorability. Certainly some issues about we don't want to, in fact, suppress certain people from being able to vote. Hopefully that, and that will be certainly worked out in the grand scenario. But I think the idea of obviously showing an ID when you vote is pretty mainstream. I happened to be on a particular television show yesterday, and the commentator indicated he had taken his boy to get his driver's permit, and he needed 2 forms of photo ID or of identification, and his birth certificate and a Social Security card, which they had to get out of a safety box. So, I mean, if that's for a driving permit, I mean, where are we with respect to voting? It seems like we ought to have some level of voting security with respect to who actually is voting.
I'm sorry. Yeah. You're the majority leader. Is there no question that your caucus will pass photo ID as a constitutional amendment?
I would say we haven't had that, but I don't think there's any question about that will be coming forward.
And
I would be a very extremely surprised majority leader if that were the case.
Okay.
and as leader, you said you're going to have a caucus meeting about amendments. How do you feel? Do you think there should be limit of 2, 3, 4, 5? Is there any number?
Well, I'm not going to get ahead of our caucus. You can get in trouble doing that. I think that we'll have that grand discussion. We actually want to take and dissect them all from a lot of different perspectives. I think all of these on face are issues that we could support, but there's always more to the story in terms of whether or not can they pass, what's the flavor of the state of Minnesota towards these things, and so on. We don't want to clutter the ballot, I don't think, with ballots that are at least amendments that may not be able to pass.
Is there a danger of having too many?
I don't. I think just perceptibly there is, but I don't know if analytically that's been proven. My understanding back in 1980 there were 5, and I'm not sure what the outcome of that was. 5 would seem a little bit high to me. I think the ballots are complex enough after you've done your normal voting and your judicial voting, and then you go to these. I do think that you probably have to limit them. My preference, I think, would be 3 or less.
Is there any chance of a legislative compromise with the governor on photo ID?
We're not going to shut it off. If this is, there's still room for that. I think I'm not understanding exactly what the details were or might be, but certainly Senator Vanderveer and former Secretary of State Kiffmeyer may have some activities going on there. I'm not sure, but we've always said that if there are some opportunities here, let's sit down and talk about them. Don't want to shut that one off.
It sounds like you're hurting a little bit from what the governor said about you earlier this week about not being fit to govern.
We're pretty thick-skinned, but I think there's a certain level of discourse around here that we try not to go over the top on, and I think the governor took that one over the top. Would I ever say the governor's unfit to govern? Of course not. That's just not us. It's not. I think the style that we ought to have around here in terms of this institution called state government. We can disagree, but let's not go quite that far. We have to work together, and we're committed to doing that. But that kind of rhetoric is not helpful.
How does this set up the rest of the session, though?
Oh, fine. We'll get over it. We have thick skin. But it's simply not useful, and I hope that that's the last we hear of that kind of rhetoric. won't hear it from our side. Won't hear it from me, I'll tell you that.
Senate Democrats were raising concerns yesterday on the floor and on the day before that in regards to the hiring of the outside counsel with Michael Broadcorp and any potential lawsuit. When are you going to make that information contract public? How much in terms of you're paying for a retainer? And how are you going to deal with this moving forward with the Senate?
Well, I can tell you what we're going to be doing near term. I'm not sure how far I can go on this because I don't have a lawyer standing here, and there's obviously some lines I probably can't go over. But more near term, we're going to be visiting, I think, next Wednesday with Senator Bach and Senator Cohen, letting them know exactly what's going on with respect to any questions they may have. I think they deserve that as members of the minority, and want to share that. Exactly what we can do in the open air, I'm not sure. We'd have to, I think, defer to the lawyers on that.
Contract exist, or was this just a verbal agreement that you brought aboard this law?
I don't know. This is all very early. I know Secretary Ludeman was contacted by the individual's lawyer, and at that point he confided that he didn't feel comfortable. That he felt at that point we needed to go lawyer to lawyer. We did check with the Attorney General. They were not willing or interested in working with us on this, and so outside counsel was sought.
But has there been a written agreement with this law firm?
I don't know. You'd have to check with the Secretary. As far as I've never seen one.
They haven't told
The Secretary told me there was one, and he wasn't going to make it available.
Okay, then there is a...
You are obviously in charge of the Senate, and you get to decide what's private and what's public. Are you going to make it available?
We'll talk about that. I didn't know until just now that there frankly was one. So it's and much. And if you read frankly the rules, the Secretary of Senate has a fair amount of discretion within our rules to incur costs relative to whatever the issues might be, whether it's to buy equipment or to buy legal services. So I believe that's $25,000. So if you and I know that much. So up to a certain point, I want to let the Secretary of the Senate do his job, and he will obviously visit with both myself and Senator Bach about it. In terms of making it available, I just don't know. It's too early. I don't know if it's a public document or not. It probably is.
How much has been spent so far?
I'm not in position to be able to answer.
How much has been spent so far?
I really don't know. My understanding, there's just been a couple of telephone calls, so whatever that might equate to, which I would not think would be huge.
Was there a retainer to hire the attorney?
You'd have to ask the Secretary. I don't know.
Was there a reason that this particular firm was sought as opposed to hired as opposed to...
Again, that was done at the Secretary's office. I had nothing. I learned on the floor of the Senate that was a Larkin firm, so...
Should you be more informed of all this?
I don't think to a point, no. I mean, I think, obviously, I'm informed to the extent I think I need to be, but in terms of the detail, who the lawyer is, I mean, you have to trust your staff in this case, and then the independent staff of the Senate. That's his job. This would be a lawsuit, if you would, against the Senate, and the Secretary is empowered under the rules to represent both sides as the chief administrator of the Senate. So, in my view, I'm perfectly willing to, certainly up to a point there are thresholds, but at this point early on, I'm willing to, let him work.
Why was Broadcorp let go?
I'm sorry, Rachel.
Why was Broadcorp let go?
Oh, that's I can't talk about that.
Do you know?
He was let go. He was an at-will employee and was terminated.
Do you know why?
I can't go any further on that one. Without a lawyer here, I don't want to talk about this. I just can't. I don't think I can.
Let's belabor this point, but Secretary Ludeman told me that this contract is not available because it's under attorney-client privilege. But it is obviously a contract that is from the Minnesota Senate, so I'm asking you, as who's in charge of the Senate, are you going to make this public or not?
I would leave it, I'd certainly defer to legal advice. I have to do that. So if we can do that, do we want this to be transparent? So if that's something that we legally can do, I think that we want to be transparent, and we want to make that available. I just don't know the rules of this game at this point. It's all new.
Senator, can you tell us when this agreement was reached with, to go into a contract with another lawyer to represent the Senate?
Oh, I'd say maybe, I can't give you a date. Everything seems like it was 2 weeks ago.
So about 2 weeks ago?
Approximately.
Longer?
More recently, but, and it was just the Secretary of Senate indicating that he had received a call, and his feeling at this point was that that this needed at this point to go to lawyer land, and that he needed to step away from those kind of conversations.
Immediately after he had been contacted by the other firm.
Just to clarify, are you the point person in your caucus on this subject, or is there somebody else, another senator, handling this?
No, well, myself and Senator Ortman, herself a lawyer, has been helpful certainly in terms of the legal, landscape, on this issue. So she and I, have been involved in it.
Why couldn't the Attorney General represent you?
They just made a decision not to. So,
Senator,
I mean, that was our first preference. That was our first ask.
Senator, you have a White House suitor coming through your hometown tomorrow. Will you play the gracious host and appear at his event, or are you...
Who is it?
Ron Paul.
I don't know what time it is. I've got certain things, but I not unlike a couple of years ago at the Republican convention in Rochester, I woke up at 7 o'clock and went down and listened to Ron Paul. I think, as all of us do, we're interested in, the people of the day. He's one of them, and so I'm not going to boycott it. It's a matter of what I'm doing at whatever time he's in town. I've got kind of a busy day tomorrow.
Are you going to back anyone?
Not at this point. I'm going to stay out of it.
Just on the confirmations issue, do you expect any of Governor Dayton's other appointments to be in jeopardy?
I don't think not at this point. I think from as we've gone down through the list, there might be some that are sort of more on the question mark list. There always was with the DFL, even whether it be even our media person, Steve Swigum at that point. I mean, and so Senator Poggemiller always had a list of those people that he was going to not confirm but just watch, and I don't think you'll find us. We're not in that mode. I think generally speaking, we may watch some, but I think our mode is to proceed with confirmations as much as we can, and I think that will be more the flavor than otherwise.
So who are you watching, and will you bring up the health commissioner for confirmation this session?
Senator Hand has indicated some level of concern there. That one hasn't been decided. We have had certain conversations about the commissioner at the PCA level, and so I would suggest maybe he is on the watch list, but they are the only ones that I know of at this point. And it doesn't mean we won't confirm them. It just, we just need to kind of get to know them a little bit better.
So in terms of the watch list, what does that mean for this session? We're already 2 weeks in. You've gotten rid of one of Dayton's commissioners.
Well, it doesn't. It may well mean that they're just watched.
Not voted on this session?
Possibly. On the other hand, there's 27. We've done. Let's see. We've confirmed. We've confirmed 4 actually with Secretary Frederickson. We've confirmed 4 of the 27. Not confirmed 1. So, what's that left? 22.
And one of those 22 is Larry Poggemiller. You just ousted Anderson because of her legislative record. Republicans have serious disagreements with Poggemiller's legislative record. Why is he not on your watch list?
He's simply not on my watch list. He's, I think, as we've talked, and I'm going to leave this up to the Higher Ed Committee to in fact, take him up. But as far as we're concerned at this point, he's not on my watch list, and I don't think not on the committee's watch list. Larry Poggemiller did a lot of work in education. I think we find him generally innovative, and while he himself was a person that was not kind to a couple of our nominees, I don't think we're not in the vengeance mode.
Watch list sounds very ominous. It sounds very close to...
Well, evaluation.
enemies
Let's
list.
just call it evaluation then. Under
Well,
evaluation.
that's not what you called it, though.
All right, we'll change it. It's under evaluation.
Talk about,
To be honest with you, there's a lot of these that, I happen to know a couple from other aspects of my life, but, we come in and a lot of these commissioners are unknown to certainly our side, probably unknown to the DFL side, perhaps better known to the DFL side, but, there takes a certain amount of time to simply get acquainted, so I think, and we need that time.
Talk a little bit about how important Tuesday's caucuses are to the Senate caucus, Republican caucus.
Well, I think it's the start of the 2012 election year, the formal start. Not that it's not already started in some degrees, but it's important. I think moreover, and well beyond our caucus. And I would just say this for either side. I just think that we have this country that's really in the hands of its people, and irrespective of whether you're Republican or Democrat, I just think it's important that you get out, that you engage yourself in not only the issues of the day, but the politics of the day, and that you be a player. That's simply that is so important. As I said earlier, the world is run by those that show up, and hopefully we'll have a lot of people showing up on Tuesday night and if you will, taking control, at least the political control of their world in whatever way they want. And there will be differences. But let's not have a stagnant society, and we don't, but let's hopefully have a strong turnout on precinct caucus night. It's it's not so cold this February, it doesn't seem like, but it's often a cold night in February, and the people that do show up are the people that I think in many ways their perspectives tend to, I think, show up in both candidates and party positions. So,
Just on the issue of the caucus night, Senator, I was talking to one senator yesterday who said, I don't even really know where to go because of the lines. We don't know what the lines are going to look. We don't know what the new lines are going to look like. How do lawmakers handle that on Tuesday night, knowing that in 3 weeks they may be representing an entirely new district?
well, it's a good question. It may not be as complicated where I live, but if you're in a metropolitan area, it may be a little more complicated. I'm going to go where I've always gone. That's about 7 cities and the city of Rochester. So we drive pretty fast that night, I will tell you that.
I think Senator Bonhoeffer is ready to
we'll get around.
Is one burning one?
No, I've never sped. No. I've never sped. Always right at the limit.
32 miles from Hayfield to Rochester, right?
Right. Yeah.
Is that truthful?
Cross my heart.